I'm here with Yanik Silver himself. I'm so glad to have you with us. How are you doing today?
I am well. Thanks, Makosi. Always good to be with you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, I want to dive right in with you and ask you, would you share a little bit about your journey, the aspects that you feel are the most important to you to share, and a little bit about the reality that you've been able to create for yourself?
Yeah, I think it might be interesting to start at, and just a super brief is where I got started was online selling digital content. And that was after leaving my father's business, actually working for him since I was 14. So that's a whole nother story. But at the year 2000, I saw the internet. I'm like, oh, this looks really interesting. And I got on there, and all of a sudden things like really started popping. People were like, well, how did you do that? Could you help me? Could you teach me how to sell what you're doing? And so that turned into a whole nother career. And then about 13 years later, or 13 years ago, I asked myself a really simple question, which was, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing for 10 more years? And it was a difficult question because I was helping a lot of people. I wouldn't go to any seminars or events or anywhere without people coming up and be like, hey, Yannick, you've changed my life. I sell guitar lessons online, or I sell whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, that's awesome. And create financial freedom for them. But then if I looked at it, I'm like, no, I don't feel like I'm fully fulfilled. And that was probably being very optimistic. So I'm a very optimistic person. Before that, everything was like, oh, I just do this. I have this idea. I'm going to make it work. And so I created something called Maverick, which is this combination of growth, impact, and fun. And I'm like, all right, we're going to take amazing adventures with awesome entrepreneurs, and we would have charity involvements, and we would have all these different business sessions in the middle of nowhere. And then about $400,000 in, my wife said, what the hell are you doing? And so it was the first time ever, Makosi, that I had something not quite work. And I also was probably, and it's the thing that I was most interested in. It really created this dilemma where I had to go back and be like, okay, what's the bigger why here? The bigger why wasn't to build an adventure travel company. It was to help change the way business is played. And so it really had to rework everything. And literally the last 10 years have been like probably the deepest spiritual growth that I've had because of that.
Can you share a little bit about why you believe that the spiritual aspect, the spiritual journey, coincided with the restructuring and reconsideration in the business?
Yeah. Previously, so I was a weird kid. I bet you were too. I think we've talked about this, but
Yeah.
I was 13, 14, 15-year old. I was really into like Stonehenge and the pyramids and all these things, UFOs, whatever, all these things. And then I put it away for a while and then just learned marketing and I learned sales and all these things. And they applied incredibly well, obviously. But at a certain point, even asking that question, I call it a cosmic alarm clock. So everyone has these cosmic alarm clock moments, and there's this little voice that gets louder and louder if we don't answer it. And of course, you can hit snooze on your cosmic alarm clock, go back to bed, or you can answer it. And that usually does require you taking this interesting leap that is going to take you beyond what you thought it was. I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll just start this other company. I know how to start companies. And it was like, no, like I believe that the universe sort of bonks you on the head harder and harder until you get the lesson. And so for me, it was starting with that $400,000. I ended up selling my Aston Martin. Go boohoo, poor Yannick. But I kept my ticket to space, and it was like, so I think there's these guardrails. So joy is this ultimate GPS that's continuing to attract us forward. So my joy was like, what I love to do, hanging out with amazing people and have these impact elements and these adventures and the business aspects. And so that was my joy pulling me forward. And then the guardrails or the pain, which was this business model is not working. This whole thing's not working. It's not in alignment with who you really are. Because when I started it, I was a different person than who I am now. And then those guardrails are wider, so you have these big swings. And when you're more in alignment with your head, which is your business side, your heart, which is your impact you want to make, and then your higher purpose, like why are you here? Then those guardrails get tighter, and it's like a nice, smoother alignment. And so that's one of the things I had to learn about and really diving deep, because what took you to where you are now or wherever your success is now is not going to get you to where you really want to be. And that's a difficult spot to imagine, because you're like, oh, I did this before. This should work. And it doesn't.
So you said something to actually two key things there. One, you used the word beyond, and then here you're also speaking about it taking you to where you want to be. Did you actually know when you embarked on your spiritual and business journey? Let's call it a spiritual business journey.
Yeah.
Did you know really what you were, number one, getting into and what it would look like? Or did you go about it a different way?
Yeah. I, I probably liken it to the way I've done goal setting, and my goal setting's changed over the years. It used to be like, okay, write down your goals, and that works. And then I was like, oh, let's write down my goals, but then add or better or faster, or so it allows the universe to come in and do things in your behalf. And then it became, what is the intention? And this really hit me. I journal quite a bit, and so I looked in one of my old journals where I was like writing ahead for my 40th birthday, and I'm like, oh, okay, I want to have X amount of millions in the bank. I want to be hanging out with one of these local celebrities that I knew. I wanted to be, I forgot what else I wrote. Oh, driving this particular car, this Fisker Karma. And then my 40th birthday actually hit, I looked at it and I showed my wife. She's like, oh, are you upset that you didn't hit some of these things? And I'm like, no, not really, because if I look at the actual intention behind all of them, it was like the money is all about freedom and doing the things that you want with people that you want and that kind of thing. The hanging out with interesting, cool people was like I had an even better opportunity. I was literally at Spaceport for the unveiling of Spaceship Two at that point for Virgin Galactic, and then Richard had invited me to a safari like 2 weeks later to go to Africa on safari. So that checked that box. And then the Fisker Karma was like it ended up being a lemon of a car, so it didn't matter. So now it's about what's the intentionality of what do you want, and so that's what I started tuning into even more. So that helped, and what I found was like you had to you had to go deeper. It was so interesting because the stuff that used to work wouldn't work, or if it would work, it wasn't fully fulfilling because it just became the new, I don't know, like ground floor for what could be if you were willing to really step into something.
Yes, what it could be. So let me ask you, there's so many people that I come across because I work with so many incredible high level entrepreneurs, leaders, executives, but I do sometimes see a fear because they're feeling that they're getting that cosmic alarm clock going ding, ding, and they keep going, shh,
Yeah.
I've got a $50 million business I created. And there's this fear that they might lose it all, or that even by venturing on this journey, that maybe they're going to separate from their significant other, or that their friends will no longer want to be connected with them. And there's just a lot of fear around actually following your joy, your euphoria, your bliss, what is authentic and aligned for you. How do you approach those moments where that fear is rising up, knowing that you have, when you're an entrepreneur, you have a certain level of responsibility to your team and your family and all of that. It does matter, but we still have to make sure we follow what's in alignment for us. How do you do that?
It's there's no one right answer, I don't think. I think it's like continuing to move forward and see what is going to be the next step and what's going to be the next step and really allowing your intuition to guide you. It's so much more when I started down this path, it was like synchronicities and intuition and things that other people might look at and be like, oh, well, that, why would you possibly do that? That doesn't make sense. But when you start following that inner guidance, and even if it looks completely wrong, it turns into something absolutely incredible. And because you were guided from within. And it is scary because you have not just whatever you've built, but you have this reputation and you have all these other things that people are possibly even looking at you. So, when you were on your way up, it was probably even easier, and it didn't feel that way, or it might not have, because you're like, oh, I don't have any cash, or I don't have any money, or whatever. But you were scrambling, and no one was paying attention to you. I love like looking at people. I don't know. Let's say Madonna, who's continually reinvented herself, or David Bowie was another one like that, and they were not scared to say, let's break this thing because I'm willing as an artist And that's actually one of the best ways I identify as an artist. And we can all, as an entrepreneur, be truly these artists of our lives and be like, no, okay, this was the old me, and we're going to continue growing and growing. And you can't just be willing to play for the fans that want to hear the oldies but goodies. You got to continue just stepping into what does it really mean to be who you truly are. And that's real work. It's real self-reflection. It's looking at the shadow aspects of yourself. It's doing these deep dives, and but then out the other side, it's so much more powerful because who you can be when you align that head, heart, higher purpose.
Could you share with us a little bit about what makes you feel the most aligned and fulfilled in your life?
There's a couple things. I love being a catalyst. I call it catalyzing even the catalysts. So finding others that are catalysts and how do we help nudge them. I love play, even like purposeful play. So not just play. I like play for no reason, but I love purposeful play. Like how do we come together and play for a particular reason that has a bigger benefit, and then designing that kind of play so it's fun and instigating these unusual opportunities. I love what brings me alive is definitely vision, like sitting down with somebody and taking whatever they're most excited by and saying, what is this overlay that we could add even more impact for the world around it that also has this marketing component, which was my background. So like, how do we increase all of it and create that total win-win? And what could that look like? So I love all of that. That lights me up. And then just random silly stuff like puppets that lights me up and doodles and I just like completely random things and but seeing how they could be almost like applied to the business world essentially because that's where I live in the entrepreneurial space and even like the spiritual world, like how do we apply that to the business space. So I love ceremony lights me up, like being in ceremony is so powerful. And you and I
Mm,
have shared ceremony together too, which is amazing in the Temescal in Mexico.
yeah, yeah, we absolutely have. You and I both resonate as two people who really believe in doing business in a very different way. And that for me, I speak about how entrepreneurs are the new conscious royals.
Ooh,
And that when we're looking at
hold
how,
on, hold on.
yes, hold on, we need to send you a crown so you can be wearing your crown too. And I want to create more conscious royals in the world because I see that leadership is beginning to move away from governmental structures and that really entrepreneurs are the ones who are paving the way. And
Yeah,
so, with that, we also have a history in business of profit first.
right.
And we believe that we can do business a different way. So, let me ask you when you see passion and purpose come into conflict with profitability, how do you find a way to move forward?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one because you like I and this is an answer or a question I ask a lot of people too because I'm like curious what their markers are for these things. And the I don't so I look at stuff not in conflict even like I'm like how do we make it a an and so it's not like, oh at the expense of profit you're creating purpose. It's like no, by creating more purpose we're actually going to increase our profitability. And so that was the entire thesis of my book Evolved Enterprise was if we add these impact layers and it actually improves our conversion rates on our offerings and it gets our customers to want to buy more and talk about it more. It gets even like amazing like celebrity endorsers to come out of the woodwork and it gets your team more excited and involved. And sometimes it's not always you can't directly see it in the bottom line, but you can sometimes you can. It depends on what you're doing. So I've had like friends be like, oh, whatever, and they'll test things like they'll add a little donation on their order page, and they're like, oh, all right, you were right, and that increased our conversion. I came from the marketing world where everything became a tactic, And so this is the thing that I don't want to become a tactic. Like it has to be authentic as well. And that's where you're so great at this because it's energetic as well, right? Like if you're doing it from a place of, oh, let's just check the box and we're going to whatever, donate X% here because we think it'll increase our business, that doesn't work. And then you'll think that it doesn't work and then you'll be annoyed by it because it has to come from this genuine place. So then you really have to dig down. I tell people like, let's find out what is your true purpose and cause. So it's usually from you personally as the entrepreneur founder, or it's your customers. What do they care about the most? And then aligning what is the impact that you're giving there. And then I love to creatively look at stuff where it's you get business has all these different lever points. So it's like the product or service itself is one, but you got the team, like empowered employment, like who could you bring in? There's a company that I studied that hires people on the autism spectrum scale, and they do quality control assurance testing across browser platforms and different iOS systems because people on the autism spectrum scale are more committed to repeatable tasks and so forth and attention to detail. So it's, let's make that a competitive advantage. And then like looking at our supply chain and looking at our voice and our distribution, like how do we use that for impact too? So there's so many elements. So I don't think it's a conflict, but I think that you do need to look at your business model. Like you can't also be a martyr and be like, we're making all this good in the world, and but we're just scraping by. And in order to make the good in the world, you have to be able to really be prosperous.
Yes, you have to allow yourself to receive the prosperity in order to be a really good steward of it. Because you can be a really great steward, but if you're stewarding 2% profit margin, there's not much you're going to
Yeah,
be able to do with that.
yeah, for sure. And that's a interesting, and I think you do this so beautifully with that euphoria, and then also deservedness, and just opening up. I mean, it's been really interesting. Like we've been doing well. We did really well before, didn't do as well, then got better, and then it was like up and down. And then I'm like, all right, this is dumb. Like, why don't I just fully open myself up and see, play a game with the universe and see? And then literally, like things have been like boom and just opening up because I am ready to be an incredible steward for all of that.
Yes, yes. So I know, because I know you, I know that you like to share a little bit of insight about the future and what coming in business. And we've had an interesting past 18 months or
Right.
so. And I see there's some massive shifts happening. What do you see for the new business paradigm over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah. So I wrote a I took I took a little flyer on being a I don't know what would it be a futurist. What's the better way of saying it? A
An
an
oracle.
oracle. Yeah. And I wrote out a report for what are my 20 predictions for the 2020, so an entire decade. And it was really interesting to look at that. And from the business side, I looked at a couple things. One, that this idea of evolved enterprise or conscious capitalism or triple bottom line, a lot of different ways of looking at it, would be essentially de facto. Like it's going to be par for the course. And then that's just going to become table stakes, or at least I hope it is, because I think that's where it is. Because customers want to buy from companies that have a greater impact and purpose. And then people want to work for companies that do as well. And you're seeing this even more so accelerated because of people don't necessarily want to go back to work. And I don't blame them because they didn't have a lot of meaning to what they were doing. You know, what is the real purpose of what they're doing? So if you're not providing that for your team, you can just see them later because that's not going to, you're not going to get the best people. So you really have to be on board about this as well. So that's one thing. Like that company I mentioned that hires from the neurodiversity spectrum, like I see more of that where it's let's bring in, I call it empowered employment. Let's bring in team and give them a real advantage or a second chance, even maybe hiring former inmates or something like that, or and looking at these different underserved populations and being like, okay, let's actually build this up and not as a handout, but as like a real way to create this incredible opportunity. Like one of my friends has a nonprofit that works in the California state prisons that trains. They do dog training, and so it's called shoot, what the heck is it called? It's Pause for Positive Change, but that's not. Oh, it's Marley's Mutts, and and so he brings these dogs into prisons where the inmates will actually live with them for 6 months at a time, and the amount of that they could get for dog training, not amount even money, but amount of like time that they get and real understanding of the dog psychology is unbelievable. And then, but at the same time, it's this win because the inmate is getting love and compassion from this dog. And so now, when they do come out, they have a skill that's not a $10 an hour or whatever skill, so that they're forced to probably do something else, but they have a skill that's $150 an hour. And so I love stuff like that where it's a true economic empowerment. So I look at that too and thinking about that in your business and how do we create that and leverage that in some way. So those are some of the areas that I think about.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I've been noticing is that more and more, and I think part of it is also being supported by social media, is that people are really buying based on identity and moving away from status as much. That's,
Right.
of course, still playing a role. People are still renting cars and whatnot to
Right.
stunt for the gram.
Yeah.
Um, but more and more people are purchasing in a way that is reflective of who they see themselves as. And so, my last question is, how do you, as an entrepreneur, the individual that's the visionary leading, how do you bring some of these concepts and infuse them into the team who is the core or the engine of the business?
Yeah, I think that actually dovetails beautifully with the last question too, which is, what also came up for me when you were talking about that is that there's a more intentionality and there's this higher consciousness that is actually automatically happening because of where we are in our time and space in the universe, in fact, because there's all these prophecies that talk about where we are. And so there is an accelerating level of consciousness, but you do also want to step into it. And I see more and more business leaders, entrepreneurs, and so forth stepping into this kind of work so that they can have more intentionality in what they do. And then that also comes down to their team. And so providing them opportunities to feel like they're fully engaged. So what do they care about, and allowing them that autonomy to go after that, allowing them a way to continue growing and learning. Because that's what we want to do. We want to continue growing. And so if they're looking at their work as being stifling them, then that's not going to show up as serving their end customer in this beautiful way. So if you provide ways that they can continue growing and learning, so just like you want to do, also that whole idea of what is the greater intentionality of what we're putting out into the world. So the bigger mission, bigger purpose, and making sure that they know exactly whatever they're doing as part of that, that they know that there's a bigger purpose to what they're delivering and who they're serving, and just making sure that they see where that connection is. I think those are some of the key things that I look at.
I love it. All right, Yannick, is there any final thing that you want to make sure people watching this take away from our conversation or that you're just feeling called to share?
Yeah, you know what? Why don't we ask the Oracle? So this is the Cosmic Journal, which is one of the special vegetarian versions, vegan leather version. I can either ask you for a number, or I'll just pick a random page.
I've got a number for you.
All right, hold on then. Let me get
Okay,
to a
let's do
different
it.
page. Hold on. All right, I'm ready.
Side note, I'd love for this to be an app.
Yeah, I have some ideas for that too.
All right. Are you ready for your number?
Ready.
All right, 33.
All right, 33. Do you want me to actually share it on the screen, or you just want to do a picture
Oh,
of it
let's share
later?
it on the screen. Let me give
All
you
right.
a, let's do that. All right,
Oh, this
go
is
for it.
interesting. Oh, this is so interesting. All right. So here's what is the last words here. And then I have a funny story to tell you about this too. So this says, "Welcome home. If you listen closely, everything is sending you a message. This morning, one bird welcomed me home to wake me from meditation. That's the thought. The word appeared as a feeling, home. The concept of feeling at home, being at home in our bodies, in our present situation, in our integrity, our alignment, and presence. Home is safety and comfort, safe that the universe looks after you, comfort in who you are, the perfect expression of infinite source. When we arrive each time on Necker Island, the staff say, "Welcome home." That's how burners greet each other too at Burning Man. Home is also where your family is, your star family. We've reassembled and gathered together. Filling your own light circle is part of coming home. The people who you immediately recognize, they share your heart. It's not something you can think into, only feel through your heart. Our heart is our beacon home to the stars. So pretty good. And then, but a funny thing about this one, so this was written, as you see at the top, is at Ulasaba, which means place of little fear, which is one of Richard Branson's safari resorts. It's a nice little make magic moment there, as we talked about. For my 40th birthday, that was the safari thing. And then, so this little journal was 108 nights. Every single day, night, I would draw one page, and that was like me totally stepping over the edge of what I felt comfortable doing, and I had no idea what I was even doing. And I travel around so much, I'm like, oh, I think I could do this. But this is really fun because this became, when I did finally publish it. So one of our mutual friends, Eric Lochtefeld, I showed him like the little moleskin of my work. And he's like, dude, you light up so much about this. I'm like, yeah, I know. I got so many other things going on. He's like, I'm just going to pay to publish this thing. I'm like, all right. And so then that turned into this amazing purple one that I just showed you. We got 888 of these. But then it forced me to figure out what is the entire like layout of it. And there's so much magic in it. And so it works like an oracle. And then like I gave one to Richard Branson, who's one of the people that I really closely relate to so much and love what he does. And so he opened this up in, I forgot where we were. We're probably in his other resort in Kenya. And he opened it up to this exact page and like all these like multiple synchronicities. And then we had all these Maasai warrior elders that were there at lunch as well with us. And he had me read it to them and then we translated it. So just this compounding amazingness of multiple synchronicities there. So thanks for picking 33.
Yes, I love that. I'm not really surprised because when you live the way that we live, this becomes like
Exactly.
literally every day.
Yeah. But it's still, every time I have a synchronicity, I'm like, ah, that's so much fun. And I love it.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful and makes me smile and in awe. And so I love it. I love it.
Yes. I want to, number one, thank you again so much for taking a few minutes out of your day to share so much amazing insight. And also, just for everyone watching, Yanik's been so kind to offer to share a few pages or from the Cosmic Journal with everyone so that you can have a few moments for self-reflection for yourself and get a little sneak peek in the magic. I love the Cosmic Journal. I've used both the deck as well as the journal with my clients, some of the prompts, and pure magic has come from those conversations. So thank you.
I love it. Yeah, you're welcome. Awesome. Thanks so much, Makosi. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you.